Joining me now live from Jerusalem is Sharren Haskel, a member of the Israeli Parliament. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I will start with, I think, the appearance of our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak standing next to Benjamin Netanyahu. What does that mean to you, and how is that being regarded inside Israel?
Well, to be honest, we are so thrilled, and we really appreciate the support and the true friendship that he's shown, and we don't take it for granted. And during these very difficult times, devastating times, it's good to know that we have a really good friend in Britain.
Were you expecting that? If we'd asked you some months ago, do you think that Britain would stand with Israel? Would you imagine the Foreign Secretary would come, the Prime Minister would come and stand there and say the actual words, "We want you to win"? Would you have imagined that?
To be honest, not completely. I mean, time after time, there's so much propaganda that's being spread about Israel. And there are many lies, and the support that we receive from the international community is quite small. So I can't say that I could imagine such a huge support, but I think that most countries had realized that this is not, a war between Hamas and Israel. This is not a war, a territorial war. This is a war on the sanctity of life. This is a war on the way we live, our values, freedom, liberty, freedom of religion, equality, democracy. These mutual values that we share were called on, and Hamas have waged war specifically on that. And so, Israel is sort of like a front, and it's the first line. But I think that England and many more European countries were hit by radical Islam, by extremism, time after time as well. And so this is a fight, and this is a war that we share together, and we have to win it. We have no other choice.
So we have heard your Prime Minister say, we need to wipe out Hamas. We need to eradicate Hamas. That is what we have to do. That is our mission. We have no choice at all. This is what we've got to do. We've heard our Prime Minister say, we hope you win. In other words, we hope you succeed in doing that. But at the same time, we've heard other spokespeople for different political organizations, different points of view saying, it can't happen. You can't eradicate an entire movement. And even if you do kill all the crucial members, if you flatten the headquarters, if you nuke these underground tunnels in Gaza, if you do all of those things, there will be other fundamentalists, theocracies, who will come and just take over anyway. There will be a vacuum that will be immediately filled with some other movement or successors of Hamas that will be equally centered on destroying Israel and, of course, Israelis.
So it's not an easy mission, and they're right to say so. I mean, this is fighting an idea of radical Islam, the idea of ISIS, the idea of Al-Qaeda. And it wasn't easy to fight Al-Qaeda. It wasn't easy to eliminate ISIS, but the world is safer without them, and the free world was able to defeat them. And the society is safer without them. And obviously, it's a very difficult and challenging mission, but I'm sure we'll be able to do it because we have no other choice. I mean, this is going to determine whether we can live here or not. When that happened once, it can easily happen again, because what we are fighting right now is ISIS. It's the exact equivalent of ISIS, and we cannot have ISIS on our border. And so the same as it took a lot of effort and time to eradicate those radical Islam, those extremism, we will do that with Hamas as well, by eliminating their infrastructures, their military facilities, their economical facilities, their communication assets. It's something that we have to do in order that Israelis will be able to feel that they can live here free, that they can send their children to school and not worry whether they're going to be slaughtered, that they can sit at home and hold their babies and not worry about someone coming, tying them down and burning their house while they are alive. That's what it actually means. And we have no other choice.
Sharren, when you say this, it is exceptionally convincing when you paint the picture of, can you imagine living with ISIS right across the border, just across a fence? You can see them from where you are, and their intent and their stated aim is to wipe you out, to eradicate you, to kill the whole lot of you and take over your land, take over your country. How could you continue living like that? You can't. That is absolutely understandable. We can all digest and accept that completely, I think. I certainly do. It makes complete sense to me. But I think people will wonder then, how come it took the appalling terrorist slaughter, that massacre on the 7th of October, to facilitate or to be the catalyst for this? Why wasn't that assumed before? How come it hadn't happened before? How come Gaza was allowed to flourish under Hamas control in the way that it did? It doesn't make sense, does it?
It is because of international pressure. Different leaders and societies who don't live here, who don't understand the culture and our neighbors, have forced us time after time to accept those kinds of acts. I mean, think about it. In 2005, there was so much international pressure for us to completely evacuate Gaza. The international community told us, don't worry. You give them their land, and that's the end of the territorial conflict. They'll live side by side. There'll be peace in the Middle East. They're going to work, and they're going to create their own state and their own autonomy. And the international community failed us because 80% of that population voted democratically to a terrorist organization. And since we left Gaza, we evacuated every single living Jew from that territory. Ever since, they have invested every penny they had in more hatred and more violence and more weapons, because it's written on the platform that they will not be silent until they completely eliminate the state of Israel. And for years, our children suffered under rockets. Schools were attacked. People were murdered. And the international community said, oh, absorb it and absorb it and absorb it. Let them train. Bring more foreign aid. And then you see those trucks with UNICEF first aid kit on every terrorist truck that entered to Israel. They have used all of that fund, all of that foreign aid, all of the humanitarian aid to that terrorist organization to accumulate it so that they have equipment to go out into a war against us. And it just exploded.
May I stop you to ask you a question? You just talked about the aid coming in and the UNICEF and the trucks and everything. And what we know is that there are trucks with aid waiting to go into Gaza now with food, with water, with medicine at the Rafah gate into the territory. But they haven't gone in yet. Is that because Egypt won't allow them in? Is it because Gaza won't allow them in? Or is it because Israel won't allow them in?
Well, first of all, there will be no aid coming in through the Israelis until they bring back our hostages. These are children, these are babies, these are elderly that are held captive in Gaza. God knows what they're going through. And so there will be no aid coming through from us. There's an issue in Egypt, similar with Jordan, where they refuse to accept any kind of refugee. From what I understand, they are afraid that once they open this border, there'll be a mass amount of refugees coming into Egypt and into Jordan. And you know what? That's another hypocrisy, because the entire world, including Europe and including Britain, has accepted refugees time after time from the Muslim world as well. And now they refuse to accept any kind of refugee. And you know what? The refugees that they accepted, including Palestinian refugees, they've been refugees for 70 years, never getting a status in those countries. What happened with the Iraqi refugee, the Syrian refugee in Britain? How long did it take for them to get a final status as citizens of the UK? And so this is another double standard of the Muslim world, where they sort of preach of accepting refugee while they are refusing to have any kind of absorbent of refugees into their countries.
Okay, let me ask you something that may seem inopportune. You may be thinking, my God, we have so much to do. It's the least of our concerns. But I do think that my viewers and listeners will be interested in your response. That's why I'm asking you the question. Is Netanyahu the right prime minister for this? Or is he the prime minister, at least in some respect, responsible for this?
I'll say it very carefully. Look, I started in my home, the Likud, who's headed by Prime Minister Netanyahu. The past 3 years have been very, very challenging politically here in Israel, with a lot of division and a lot of internal fights, political fights. I have resigned from the Likud, moved to another party in order to change the prime minister. In the last year, there's been massive demonstration, yes. But since Saturday, everything changed. We put aside all of our differences, all of our internal things and everything that divided us. All of our political aspect is aside, because what we concentrate now is the existence of our people, is the life of our children. And so during the time of war, this is what we have. And the same day on Saturday, I declared from the opposition that I will back up Netanyahu for any fierce move in order to eradicate Hamas and to win this war. We fully support him and back him down. One day after this war will finish, we'll do all of our account and we'll continue with our political life and political rivalries.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm very